problems of technology and connecting with you. I have a hypothesis that the moment you learn anything new in technology, it becomes obsolete. Okay, so you have to keep up, they keep changing it. All right, I want to review what I said last time and then talk about the applications in technology. And as I review it, I hope I'll be giving you some new information. Speeches I gave before, the presentations I gave before, I talked once about language and literacy development and once about writing. And writing is big stuff. I think we have a lot of potential there. How we can use writing to solve problems, make ourselves smarter, and the computer has been a huge help. And then we'll look at some areas where technology doesn't help us. And we have to understand technology is not the answer to all of our problems. Okay, it's not always going to save us. So let's go to language and literacy development, and I'll review briefly what I talked about before. I talked last 2 years ago, I talked about the difference between acquiring a language and learning a language. Acquisition, as I mentioned then, is subconscious. While it's happening, you don't know it's happening. You think you're doing something else, but at the same time, you might be acquiring language. You think you're reading a book, watching a movie, you might be acquiring language at the same time. When you finish acquiring, you don't even know that anything has happened. You don't know that anything has changed. You don't know a new rule of the language. You just have a feeling that some things sound correct, that feel correct. We are very good at language acquisition. Human beings are geniuses at language acquisition. It comes very easily to us. The second way of getting better in a language is called learning. We are not very good in learning. In fact, we're really quite bad at it. And that's, of course, what we do in classes. We're going to change all that. Learning means knowing about language. When we talk about grammar, when we're talking about rules, we're talking about conscious knowledge. We're talking about learning. Now, I want to briefly review acquisition and let you experience it. Some of you have heard this before. And I'm going to give you two very quick lessons in another language, and you can tell me which one is better. Lesson number one. Wir werden jetzt anfangen, Deutsch zu lernen. Und ich möchte voraussagen, dass nach meiner Meinung Deutsch ist eine sehr schöne Sprache. Und ich hoffe, dass Sie alle sehr viel Erfolg mit Deutsch haben werden. What do you think? Good lesson so far? You think if I kept speaking to you like that, you would acquire German? No. How about if I slowed it down? That actually wasn't very fast. That wouldn't help at all. How about if I repeated it? How about if I repeated it and then you repeated it back? No, that wouldn't help very much either. Let me give you the second lesson and you'll see what works. Das, you have to watch me in the screen. Das ist mein Kopf. Verstehen Sie das? Kopf, ja, Kopf. Und hier sind meine Augen, Augen. Ich habe zwei Augen. Eins, zwei. Und hier sind meine Ohren. Ich habe zwei Ohren. Eins, zwei. Und hier sind meine Zigaretten. Ich habe keine Zigaretten. Zigaretten sind nicht gut. If you understood lesson number 2, not every word, but more or less, I did everything to help you acquire language. Here is the main point, the big discovery, not my idea. I thought I had discovered it, but once I announced it, I discovered that lots of people knew about it before I did, which really made me feel good, let me tell you. We acquire language in one way when we understand it. We don't acquire language when we study it. We don't acquire language when we speak and get our errors corrected. We acquire language when we understand what people tell us and when we understand what we hear. We don't have to understand every single word. The second German lesson, if you never had German before, you probably did not understand every single word. That's okay. As long as you got something of it, language acquisition happened. I want to repeat two amazing facts about language acquisition. And I'm still very impressed by these. These are very Chomskyan ideas from Noam Chomsky. Number one, acquiring language through understanding what people tell you, what we call comprehensible input, is not hard work. In fact, it's easy. It's effortless. You didn't have to work hard to acquire a little bit of German from the second lesson. All you had to do is understand a little. Watch me make a few silly jokes. That's it. Number two, even more amazing. Language acquisition is involuntary. If you understood some of the second lesson, you acquired some German, whether you liked it or not, whether you wanted to or not. Chomsky says the language acquisition device is a mental organ, kind of like the visual system. You can't turn off your visual system. If your eyes are open and you can see well and there's light, you will see. You will see figures, pictures, etc. You can't decide not to see. It always works. The same thing with language acquisition. Well, this is the fundamental finding, I think. Again, it's not original with me. I simply think it's correct, and I've been responsible for public relations, for sharing it with people. Let me talk about the features of input that really work. Number one, good input is, of course, comprehensible. Number two, it has to be interesting. My colleague Leonard Newmark from San Diego kept pointing it out. We have to pay attention to it. If it's not interesting, you won't pay attention. And this seems like an obvious thing, but it's not. Most language classes I have been in and I have seen are painfully boring. So it's no wonder we haven't seen too much progress in language teaching, okay? We have to have interesting input. In fact, I like the term compelling. Compelling means so interesting that you temporarily forget that you're listening to another language or reading another language. You are completely interested in the message. So this tells us how we learn to read and how we learn to speak. We learn to read by understanding what we read. We learn to speak by understanding what we hear. The ability to speak and write is the result of language acquisition. All the classes I have seen, etc., they make people talk right away, correct their mistakes. No, that's the result that comes later, okay? Speaking is the result of language acquisition. So is writing. There's a lot of research on this, and it's in my books and papers, and I've made as many of them as possible free of charge. All you have to do is go to sdkrashen.com. Let me repeat that, sdkrashen.com, and you can order several of my books and quite a few of my articles, and I'm constantly trying to add to this all the time. I give away my books not because I'm generous. I give it away because they're too expensive. Nobody can afford them. I can't afford all the technical books. I cannot afford all the journals. And that's been a major problem. So giving it away is the only possibility that I can see. Let me tell you what one of the research studies is. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's not the only one. There are hundreds of it, hundreds of them. If you look at my book, The Power of Reading, you see lots and lots of examples. This one I just like. I think it's an interesting study. It was done by a former student of mine, Fei Shin, who's now retired from California State University. She worked with a high school student, secondary school student named Sophie. And Sophie had been limited English speaking. Her first language was Putonghua, was Chinese Mandarin. But she, at the time of this study, when she was in secondary school, she was already pretty good in English. The school that she went to gave people a test in English reading in the fall when they arrived to see how they scored. Then they gave them English classes through the year, and they gave them a test at the end of the year to see how much they improved. Sophie did not improve during the year. In fact, she got worse. Okay, her scores in the spring were lower than her scores in the fall when she came back to school. Then she took another test in the spring. They tested them twice a year, as you know. Oh, I'm sorry. Then she went home for the summer vacation. When she came back in the fall, her scores were back up and higher than they were the year before. So she went down during the year. Her English got worse, and she improved over the summer and was better at the end of the summer than she was before. What was she doing in the summer? Well, you can guess. She went to the local public library, which was air conditioned and comfortable, several days a week, and she read for pleasure. She read English books, not to improve her English, but because they were there and she liked them. She read Sweet Valley High. She read Twilight. She read Nancy Drew. I've read Sweet Valley, Nancy Drew, and Twilight. I didn't understand Twilight, I have to admit to you. But the others I've read, and I think they're really, really interesting. They're good reading. She averaged 50 books over the summer. That's why her English improved. The answer is getting comprehensible input, in this case, reading. We are quite sure that it's reading. People say, well, you should go to the country and socialize with people and talk and have conversations. Then you'll get better. The research doesn't support this. I co-authored a paper on this with Benico Mason, and we looked at how much people improved in immersion. Not very much at all. But then when our students went back, our one subject went back and took classes where they did lots of interesting reading, lots of good stories, then they improved. In preparing for this, I came across a study that I hadn't looked at in a while. I'm very excited about it. It's by Gradman and Hanania, 1991, published in the Modern Language Journal. They looked at university students, international students, English as a second language, and they looked to see what caused them to improve, what predicted scores on the TOEFL examination. The amount of speaking that they did outside of school didn't help. In fact, it was slightly negative. Their overall exposure to English outside of school didn't count. It was slightly negative. The amount of pleasure reading that they did, self-selected pleasure reading, was a positive predictor. So it's not just input, it's comprehensible input, interesting input, and a great deal of it. That's not all. That's some of it. That's not all, but it gets even better. Reading is a gift that keeps giving all the time. The last couple of years, I have discovered a lot of research that shows, I think very convincingly, reading gives you language, yes. If you read a lot, your language gets better, your spelling gets better, your vocabulary gets better, your writing gets better, your grammar gets better, all those things. But something else gets better. People who read more know more. They know more about everything. And mostly these are readers of fiction. Isn't that interesting? Reading fiction gives you more knowledge of just about everything. Gives you knowledge of science, of history, of technology, just about everything. Turns out reading fiction is very good for you. Two researchers, Stanovich and Cunningham, published a paper. I just discovered it about a year ago. I read it. I was absolutely astonished by it. I wrote my colleague, Jeff McQuillan. I said, have you seen this paper? He said, yes, it's wonderful. So we're the only ones who knew about it. Now I want everyone to know about it. Here's what Stanovich and Cunningham did. They took university students and gave them, these are English as a first language, they gave them tests of subject matter. They gave them tests of science. What do the lungs do? They gave them tests of history. They gave them tests of geography. Where is the Panama Canal, etc. Tests of general knowledge. Then they asked them questions. One question was, are you familiar with contemporary novels and movies? Have you heard of Maya Angelou, for example? Questions like this. Those people did better on the tests. People who are more familiar with popular novels and good movies knew more about everything. Then they looked at their high school grades. High school grades did not predict how much you knew about the world. Reading for pleasure was a much better predictor than hard study, working hard. In this case, the path of pleasure is more powerful than the path of hard work. By the way, you might be interested in this. Researcher named Alfie Kohn wrote a book called The Homework Myth. His conclusion, not only doesn't hard study help, but homework doesn't help. He found no effect for homework. Students who did more homework in first grade, third grade, all the way through, did not do better in anything. They didn't do better in school. They didn't know more, etc. He found a tiny, tiny effect for older students, but when he did better statistical analyses, multiple regression, etc., excuse me, sorry, that disappeared as well. So reading for pleasure, what we're in favor of, Alfie Kohn recommends, less homework, more time in the library, reading for pleasure. The people you know who know the most about the world are people who read for pleasure. I found this out a few years ago, I'd say about 15 years ago, when I was on jury duty. There's a law in the United States, if you're a voter, you're drafted. You're forced to serve on a jury every few years. I've done it a few times. And you listen to a trial. I went to the trial, and because I was a college professor, I was made the head of the jury, the foreman. I was not a competent jury person. I did a terrible job, in my opinion. I didn't know enough. If I had read a John Grisham novel called The Runaway Jury, justice would have been served. I learned more about the law and juries from this novel. I got to tell you about my cousin Evelyn. My cousin Evelyn is the classic older cousin who is very nice to younger cousins. When I was a little boy, I used to visit her all the time. I used to visit her and her husband, Marty, and they were both wonderful. I played the piano, Evelyn played the violin, etc. And we're still friends. I still talk to her. She's about 10 years older than I am. And last time I talked to her, it was a couple of months ago, she said, you know, my husband, Marty, who passed away recently, had a law degree. He knew a lot about the law. Stephen, she said, I'm going to find out about the law. I'm going to take a class. And I said, Evelyn, try reading John Grisham novels. She did it. I bought the novels. I sent them to her. I owe her a lot. She was a good pal of my mother too. So I have to be very nice to Evelyn. She read the novels. She said, you're right. She and I agreed that if you read 5, 6, 7 John Grisham novels, it's like a year of law school. You get this stuff through fiction and stories, not through study. I'll give you another research paper that came out in the about 10 years ago. I like this paper because it's only 2 pages. I love short papers. Researcher looked at, he basically, his name is DeVries, paper published in 1970. He looked at 2 groups of 10-year-old children, first language, in their English class. One group did the classic English class. They wrote 2 essays every week. The second group wrote nothing. They read. The teacher encouraged lots and lots of reading, self-selected, free voluntary reading. Who did better on the final essay, the final test? The ones who read did better in content, mechanics, organization, grammar, everything. It's reading that helps you acquire writing style, makes you a good writer, etc. So self-selected pleasure reading gives you more language, gives you more knowledge, but it gives you something else. People who read more understand other people much better. They have more of what's called empathy. Um, the radio personality Terry Gross, who runs a program called Fresh Air, explained this very, very well. She said, when you read fiction, what you're learning in part is empathy. You're learning to understand other people. You're learning to be somebody else. You're learning to see the world through their eyes. Similar statement was by Alice Walker, Color Purple, wonderful writer. Alice Walker feels that the development of empathy is the function of literature. If literature didn't inspire empathy and compassion, it would be virtually useless. So this is the case for reading that I made last time, a few updates, and my conclusion today is the same as it was then. If this is true, we want to make sure every person has access to books. This means libraries, libraries, libraries. Not only do we want libraries, but we want librarians. Studies done by my hero in this area, Keith Curry Lance, does wonderful work on libraries in the United States. Students who go to schools with better libraries, who have a librarian there, who can find the right books and connect books to children, they do better in reading. They do better on tests of reading. Children who live close to a public library, who use it, also do better in schools. I want to stay with self-selected reading just for a little while. This is one of the main points I want to make. Self-selection is very important. When you select a book by yourself that you want to read, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be comprehensible. There are studies showing this, but I'll use a different kind of data, which I think is more meaningful. When I was in secondary school in the United States in the Midwest, like everybody else, I took language class, language arts class. We studied English literature. We studied British literature. I read all the assigned books. I wrote the essays, and I took tests. I took tests. I passed them all. I don't remember a single book I read in secondary school for those classes. Not a single one. And I'm betting you don't remember either because they were assigned. Another good evidence for this is what happens when someone gives you a book as a gift. Do you read it? No, I don't. I get a book as a gift. It goes on a shelf. And Garrison Keillor said this. He says, I have a shelf like that. When I pass by the books that people gave me as gifts, they're staring down at me, making me feel guilty. I now give them away to libraries, etc. Gift books don't work. I don't give books as gifts anymore. There's one exception. Oh, and there's this horrible time. A week later, your friend says, how did you like that book I gave you? And you haven't read it, of course. There's one exception. There's one person in my life, when he recommends a book, I read it right away. I stop everything I'm doing and I read it because he knows me better than I know myself, and that's my son. Okay. We all have someone in life like that we really, really get good advice from, etc. Good for us. That's why I think self-selected is important. Now, how does technology help us here? Well, there was a wonderful science fiction series by Isaac Asimov. And in the series called Foundation, the characters introduced something called the Universal Encyclopedia. The goal of the scholars then in the book was to construct the encyclopedia with all human knowledge. Guess what? We've done that. We call it Google. The internet is becoming the universal encyclopedia. You can get nearly anything on Google, and it's getting better all the time. For language acquisition, not only can you get anything, you can get fiction, you can get nonfiction, you can get it in most languages, and as time goes on, my hope is that you'll get it in regular language, kind of simplified language, easy language, etc. So we now have this This is fantastic. Okay. Well, I wanted to make a surprising statement. I don't think the computer is the best thing for technology. I think the book is better. Okay. Let me tell you about books and why they're so wonderful. When you get a book, you can carry it around. You don't need to plug it in. You can put it in your pocket, and it's random access. When you read something in digital on the computer, it's quite difficult sometimes to find what you're doing. You can't put notes in the margin, etc. So I find the book is absolutely spectacular. They're too expensive, but I hope we'll take care of that. So yes, I love the computer. I think we're doing a wonderful job, but let's not forget the virtue of the book. It turns out that for narrative prose, reading digital is fine. But when it's knowledge, when it's subject matter, many of us prefer printing it out or getting it in book form. I still have books. I can pick up a book that I read 20 years ago. I look at my notes in the margin and the whole thing comes back. It's a little tougher to do that on the computer, and paper costs a lot of money these days. Okay. Okay. So it's not, let me talk about the rest of technology and what it can do for us. The last presentation I gave you, I talked about writing. Here's where I think tech is fabulous. Tech is making us smarter than we ever were in the past. And I'm very disappointed, worried that we're not taking full advantage of the word processor. The word processor has changed my life. But in order to understand how tech can help us out here, we have to understand how writing works and how it helps us. Let me begin by telling you about a guy named John Tate. My son and daughter-in-law met in graduate school in mathematics, University of Texas. And one of their colleagues, my son and his wife are now math professors. Can you imagine? He's the real Dr. Krashen. I am a pale imitation compared to him. I'm going to be like him when I grow up. Okay. Anyway, John Tate, well, a student once asked John, let me tell you about John Tate first. He was one of the world's great mathematicians. He did number theory, he did algebra, he did everything. And someone once asked him in a public lecture, Professor Tate, what's your day like, your work day? He says, well, about 10% of the time, I'm making progress in math. 40% of the time, I'm making mistakes. And 90% of the time, I'm thinking, how can I be so stupid nearly all the time? This is what writing is like for all of us. The difference between me and most of you is I understand it and accept it. Here's what happens in writing and why we can do so much better if we understand how technology can help us. I have writer's blocks all the time. You do too. My whole day is one writer's block after another. Let me tell you something. When you get a writer's block, be happy. It means you're about to learn something new. I'll tell you the secret of overcoming writer's blocks or taking advantage. When I start writing, my first writer's block is right away, just like John Tate. I get it all the time. What do? I know what to do about it. I stop and I take a very quick break, a mindless break, where I do something that requires no creative thought. I don't work on something intellectual. I do something mindless. I wash a few dishes. I put away some laundry. Okay. I do stuff like that. And it's only 2 or 3 minutes. I go back to my writing and the log jam, the problem is a little bit looser. I see better connections. I see a way out. I make tiny bits of progress, sometimes a major progress where I have something really big. So the sequence, the true composing process, start writing, have a block, happens right away. Take a break, do something stupid, easy. and clean up your house. That's how it gets done. We call this the inauthentic labor of life. It's also called shit work. Okay. And you can clean up your house while you're doing it. Go back at the end of the day and repeat the process again, again, and again. I do this all day long, right? Writer's block. Take a break. When you take a break and you do something mindless, your subconscious mind will help you solve the problem. I read this in a book by Graham Wallace, 1926. You have a lot of hard work, you find a problem, take a break, do something silly. This is what I do. I used to travel a lot. I don't travel anymore. I used to spend a lot of time in hotel rooms. Here's the secret life of Steve Krashen in hotel rooms, okay? Get into the room, take my suitcase, put it on the bed, open it up, take my computer out, open it up, sit down, start to work. Within 5 minutes, writer's block. Go back to the suitcase, take out 2 shirts, hang them up, okay? Go back to the writing. At the end of the evening, I have unpacked the bag. It's neat. Clothes won't get wrinkled. And I've made progress on my manuscript because that probably happened 20 times. I worked this morning for a couple of hours, writer's block after writer's block after writer's block. I had an interview. I'm bragging now, name dropping. I did a webinar with Noam Chomsky. Can you imagine? That was exciting. Wow. We agreed on this. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. Isn't that remarkable? That means you've got a block. You've got to solve it. We discussed the case of Eric Lenneberg. I did my dissertation showing Eric Lenneberg was wrong, okay? He claimed that, I was into the brain then, that you have the right side and the left side. In the beginning, it's all pushed together. And then gradually, language goes over to the left, spatial relations to the right. And the journey is done by the time you're in puberty, by the time you're 12, 13, 14 years old. And that's the beginning of accents. Wrong. I looked at the research, brain research. I found the 2 sides became different much earlier, like 5 years old, sometimes even at the beginning. And I wrote Lenneberg. I said, by the way, you're wrong. He wrote back and said, I know. I found that out. Thanks for the help. But Chomsky and I agreed on this, and I told Lenneberg this. You were being wrong was a brilliant hypothesis. Thinking this was that this is the beginning of accents turned out to be wrong, but it pushed us ahead. I found out that the left and right side of the brain were not the source of accents. We had to go look elsewhere. So Lenneberg did a good thing. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. His being wrong helped us find a new avenue, a new explanation, a better one. I'll kind of conclude this now by quoting Saul Bellow, who said, I have 2 kinds of revisions. One is little things. I see a poor spelling, wrong choice of a word. The other is a new idea. I like both of them. The second one is fantastic. It is rejoicing. It's wonderful. Another scholar said, many writers, average writers write, good writers rewrite. Isn't that nice? Another writer said, I forgot his name, he says, I'm not a good writer, but I'm a really good rewriter. And that is really where it's at. So once we embrace this, then we see how the computer helps us. That word processing is fantastic. Very few people do this. I look to see what writing class is. Writing class should be all about rewriting and how wonderful it is, and it's not. Okay. Let me now talk a little bit about a place where the computer won't help us, technology won't help us. I'll tell you a story. A long time ago, 20 years ago, I guess, I was invited by a wealthy Los Angeles businessman to visit him in his home in the Hollywood Hills. He sent a car for me, a chauffeur. This guy had a lot of, I don't remember his name, why he was wealthy, but he brought me up there. He was from Germany and he had a very slight German accent. He said, I want to get rid of my accent and I'll hire you to do that. And I told him what I'm about to tell you, that there's no technical cure for it. And I gave him a path out, which I'm going to tell you. He said, no, that's no good. So how about if I told you, we'll set up a computer, we'll have you speak into the computer, there'll be a spectrograph that'll show your accent, and we'll compare that to a native speaker, and we'll see how close you can get. He said, yes, that'll do that. I said, it won't work. He asked me to leave. He kicked me out of his house, basically. He was going to pay me, I'm sure, a lot of money. Okay, but it was phony. Let me tell you what the theory is on accent, why tech has nothing to do with it. This experience happened to me when I was teaching in Ethiopia. Four good things. This conversation happened to me in Ethiopia. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. Okay. Number one, I met my wife. She was teaching in the same school. She's from the United States. And after 56 years, we're still doing fine. So that's wonderful. I learned to speak Amharic, a Semitic language, which pushed me a little farther along on my road to my career. And let's talk about drugs. I had my first cup of coffee. I had had no coffee in my life because mom was a coffee drinker. We were told in those days coffee's bad for you. I came to school one day completely sleepy. I had coffee. I woke up. Life changed. I went from a failure to an academic success. And that wonderful teacher on the faculty member, Mrs. Saeed, I'd like to find her someday, give her a big hug and thank her for this, okay? A double espresso was my first cup of coffee, and it's been working. It's been wonderful. David Letterman, the comedian, said, without coffee, I have no trace of a personality. It's pretty much like that. So in Ethiopia, I met at school a guy who was working for the British Embassy, and we were chatting, and he was telling me about his experiences studying French in secondary school. He said it was horrible. He said we had to take a final exam. This is talking about his experiences as a teenager. He said I had to speak French in front of 4 native speakers of French, have a conversation. That was the examination. For a sensitive teenager, that was hell. He said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to insult them, show them that they're fools, okay? And that I hated them. I hated their French classes. I hated everything about France and French. He came in dressed French. He had a beret, okay? And he used what he thought was an exaggerated French accent. He said, bonjour mes amis, je suis très content d'être ici avec vous. Comment ça va? The teacher said, hey, that's pretty good. Why didn't you talk like that when you were in my class? He didn't do it. He wouldn't do that in real life. He wouldn't do that because he'd feel ridiculous. We don't do our best accents because we feel silly. There's something called an output filter, okay? I'm sure that most of you can speak English with a perfect American accent if you met me on the street and we had a drink. You won't, though. You feel it's not you. I meet someone from Great Britain, from London. I don't start speaking with a British accent. I can do it a little bit, but I feel foolish. It's not me. Accent is a marker of club membership. It's what group you belong to. Accent has very little to do with comprehension, as all of you know. You have to have a really bad accent to make yourself incomprehensible, okay? Generally, there's no problem. What do accent classes do? They work on comprehensibility. They work on simple segments, getting this consonant correct, etc. Doesn't make much of a difference at all. This one, we can already do it. Peter Ustinov is a good example, famous actor. He's a wonderful actor, by the way, if you've seen him in movies. He's appeared in French movies, and he plays a French character. His French accent is perfect. He knows it. The French people hear him speak French in the movies. They think he's French. Peter Ustinov in an interview says, I can do that in the movies, but I can't do that in real life. If I meet someone on the street from France, I don't start speaking with this French accent. I have an English accent, okay? It's club membership. Technology has absolutely nothing to do with getting a better accent. So we have to be careful. It's not always the solution, but sometimes it is. Well, that is my message today. I'm sad that we have not taken more advantage of the word processor. Before the word processor, revision meant you had to rewrite the whole thing. Do you remember those days? Those were awful for me in secondary school. Word processor, we have gotten rid of all the unnecessary work of writing. It's all solving your problems, eliminating your writer's block. It's now easy. I think maybe, I'm guessing, maybe 2 writers out of 100 know this, that word processor is making you better. And in classes, I don't know, we make kids write in class. No, you have to have a word processor. Then it makes sense. And be able to print it out, make corrections that we all do, etc. So technology is already there for us and can already help us enormously in writing. We just haven't realized it yet because we don't understand how revision works. One point I neglected to say I think might help. The hardest thing in writing is writing the first draft, okay? Getting it down. Ernest Hemingway has a great quote about this, which helped me enormously and is going to help you. The important thing, get that first draft done. Hemingway said it. The first draft of anything is shit. Once you understand that, you can make progress. I write the first draft. I don't care if it's very good. It doesn't have to be good. Then I revise and revise. There's no shame in revise. That is the secret. And that's where the word processor is the greatest gift to writers and thinkers that we have. Okay, I'll stop here and see if there are any comments, questions. It's a big chunk of stuff, I know. Maybe I should ask the first question. Okay.
Well,
Uh,
um,
yeah.
that was really wonderful, Dr. Krashen. And it seems like it was just a few months that we had you as our guest in our organization. And the very first time that we've interviewed you, it was with the massive open online course with the help of the United States Embassy here in the
Oh,
Philippines.
okay. Yeah.
After that, it was the International English Language Teachers Association, and then now it was just only me. Okay, as like,
Oh, then I'll ask the questions then. I'll save you the trouble.
but Doctor, I already have 3 insights with what you have just given. Okay, I don't consider this right now as a lecture, but as if you are just mentoring a younger mind when it comes to appreciating language. So the first question that we got in here is that you mentioned about pleasure reading. Is it best that when we give activities when it comes to reading, we should ask or we should require the students to choose what they really want to read or to use in that activity, or it might affect the subject matter or the area that we're trying to teach?
Sometimes you are reading for a specific purpose. You need to know something. You need some facts. But most of our reading, I would say, no activities, nothing. Read it because you like it, you want to read it, and then go to another book, go to another story, go to something else. I don't write something down after I read something. If I had to do that, I would never read. So the idea of comprehension questions, thought questions, we have our own questions. Let me give you another idea here. Number one comes from the Persian philosopher Rumi. We all have our own interests and our special talents. We're all geniuses at something. We are all different. Happiness comes when we find out what our path is, and we're all different. The role of school is to help you find your path. A good teacher helps you find what you're interested in. That once you find that, you're okay. Then you find others on the same path and you make progress. No comprehension questions, no thought questions, no creative questions. Go on to find something that works for you. Everybody, okay, that's part number one. This is a new theory. Part number one, we all have our own paths. Number two, the way we get smart is by solving problems that are on our path, that are things meaningful to me or you, not to somebody else. We are successful and happy when we do this. I got to tell you about my friend Hub. Hub is the local handyman where I live. And I got to know Hub pretty well. My wife and I had dinner with him and his wife. Hub is a very well-rounded guy. He comes in and fixes things, okay, which I need all the time. He says the dishwasher doesn't work. Okay, the lights don't go on. This drawer is stuck. Hub will come and fix it, or he'll send his guy out to do it. Hub is also a very well-read person, and he's an accomplished actor in amateur theater here in the amateur program. I've seen him in plays. He's great. You have a conversation with him about anything. When Hub was in secondary school, he was a terrible student. He was going to drop out of school. The superintendent sat down with him, this is wonderful, and had a talk and said, young man, stay in school. Take any classes you want. Doesn't matter if they're required. I will make sure you graduate secondary school if you take the right number of classes. Hub went back to school. He took carpentry. He took electrical repair. You see what I mean? He took automobile mechanics. That's all he did. He was thrilled. Today, he has realized his potential. And it's the superintendent who got him to follow his path, his own path. And as Hub solved problems on his path, he grew intellectually. I keep promising Hub, I'm going to write an article about him. But that's it. For me, I'll tell you my story. Not only didn't I drink coffee, that was part of the problem, but I didn't know what I wanted. I took the classes everybody else did. I took American history, literature, math. I went pretty far in math because it made me look good. I was showing off that I could understand calculus. Okay, I liked it, but not to that extent. When I went back to school after Ethiopia, I went back in teacher education to become an ESL teacher. I discovered linguistics and language acquisition. I suddenly went from poor student to good student because this stuff I liked. It felt natural. It felt like it was something I should be studying. I finally got to take courses I liked. Phonetics, language universals, grammar theory, language acquisition, how to teach language. That stuff I really liked. So it's finding our path that's super important. That is part of this entire theory that I should have mentioned in the talk. Okay, comprehension questions won't be necessary. If you pick up a book that you like, because it's important and it's part of what you like, say Steve Krashen's latest book on language teaching, you don't need comprehension questions. You knew what you were looking for. So great question. No questions at the end of the chapter.
That was really remarkable, doctor, because as I go into this path of teaching, whenever I'm focusing on language itself, I don't just simply go into the the usual teaching, but just like you've mentioned, at least I could say that I have a support from a well-known personality in this field, wherein we give, or I personally give activities to my students wherein they use where they are really an expert, as I would say. Let them learn in their own way. Because like what you mentioned, if you give something that they already knew, they will just follow it. And like in your language acquisition theory itself, it would not be natural itself. It would not be natural. And the second question that I would follow up with this one is when you mentioned about writer's block. Most of us encounter it. Students nowadays, most especially those who are in the senior high school level. What you actually you've mentioned your way of getting rid of it, but with the current generation and after, because right now we are still transitioning from the online setup going back into a face-to-face classes or the usual classroom setup itself. I wanted to know, doctor, if you could give any few more tips when it comes to students who encounter this writer's block in and out of the school.
The only cure is to stop, take a break, do something simple. I don't know anything else. It's kind of like try to access your subconscious mind. Creativity comes from the subconscious mind. By the way, there's a good way of knowing if you're on your path. A famous writer, feminist writer, said this. She said, when I'm writing, I don't feel I should be doing something else. When you have found that, when you feel you're doing the right thing, that's your path. So I can do this stuff all day long because I feel this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And we're all different. We need other people to do the things we're not good at and respect their talents. Yes, take a break. I think it's the only way I know to deal with it. Maybe you need a slightly, well, great thinkers. Einstein played the violin, remember? Or went out on a boat. Sometimes what they do is they program that into the day, break time. They know not exactly what time, but they know they're going to take breaks. And sometimes they may need a half an hour off. You never know. Doesn't work for me. Going for a walk doesn't really help unless I take pencil and paper with me. I never leave the house without some kind of pen and paper because you never know when the new idea is going to come. Oh, this happened to me once. I had this idea. It was about pedagogy. Excuse me. Should we have targeted structures and all that? And the idea I had was if you give people lots of comprehensible input, the rule that they're ready to acquire will be there in the structure. Okay, you don't have to worry. I had that idea when I was driving. I call this the Pasadena Freeway Hypothesis. I was on the Pasadena Freeway, which connects Los Angeles and Pasadena, and I had this great insight. I stopped the car. I stopped at the next rest place and I wrote it down. Otherwise, it will be gone. During that break, when the idea comes, you must write it down immediately. They tell the story of the man who had such a brilliant idea. He sank to his knees to thank God for it and found on getting up, he had forgotten the idea. Write it, always carry pencil and paper with you. Always, you can't always have a computer with you. People your generation can do it on the cell phone. I can't yet, I'm too old. They do it awkwardly. But I always have some way to write it down right away and make sure I don't throw away the paper.
Very natural suggestion, doctor. And that's what I also tell my students. But actually, the only problem that we're facing is the deadline itself. If we educators usually give them enough time to revitalize themselves,
Yeah.
definitely they would encounter that. Even Dr. Stephen Krashen mentioned that he encounters that. But just like you mentioned, go into your, inner conscious rest. Okay. But the very simple task is to stop. Like you mentioned, stop, you take a break, do something that would allow me to say this, Dr. Krashen, enlighten yourself again. And once you are back into that path, continue it. And I also enjoyed right now what you mentioned is to bring pen and paper, because me personally, I enjoy using technology, but nothing beats a pen and a paper a simple, a notepad, a pen, or a pencil, because definitely it would help you. It would help you execute everything. And like you mentioned, if you forget it, there would be a loss, not just for yourself, but for those who will be benefiting with the idea that you have, which is
Let's
really,
talk about, let's talk about deadlines and how to deal with them. My former Chinese teacher, Hai Lu, was very interested in mindfulness. She not only taught Chinese at her school or teaches it, but she became the coach of the track and field team. Okay, one of the coaches, to teach them about mindfulness. She's not an athlete, to my knowledge, but she told them about this. Mindfulness is what we need for this. Part of mindfulness, the part that I use every day, is to not worry about my deadlines, not worry about what might happen, what I did wrong yesterday, or the job tomorrow. She tells athletes, if you're hitting the baseball, don't worry about when you struck out 3 innings ago. Don't worry about what's going to happen next. That one pitch, that one instant now is what counts. When you have a deadline, try your best to forget it. Pretend you have all the time in the world. Then you get done a lot faster. I go through this mindfulness exercise every single morning. I repeat to myself what Coach John Wooden said, the UCLA basketball coach. Don't let what you can't do stop you from doing what you can do. Forget what you can't do. Say, I'm going to do this. And the rest of it doesn't exist. Pretend the deadline doesn't exist. You'll be done a lot faster. The idea of writing so many words per day is not a bad idea, by the way. So if you have a goal of, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day, 600 words a day, I do that sometimes. But I focus only on those 600 words, not on the whole essay, not on the book I'm writing or whatever. Just today's little dose is all that matters. And that is something we need to focus on. It's hard to do in the beginning, but I'm getting used to it and it works. There's a deadline, forget it. That's my advice.
that's really wonderful. And um, I think I could give the follow-up question with regards to that one, because another idea that you've shared with our lecture for today would be the word processor. It
The
it
what?
the word processor, doctor.
The word processor. Okay.
Yes, because the explanation that you gave right now, don't mind about the deadlines, but focus on what you're going to do. We are helping our mind, which is considered as the greatest processor that even technology cannot beat, because the mind is the one who processes technology. So the question that I would just like to ask with you, doctor, is that when it comes to processing in language, do we always consider the references or how we understand the reference itself?
What do you mean by the references?
Uh, a good example for that question, doctor, is when we are doing research, because we have references and it will
Okay,
support our
I see.
processing. Do you think, doctor, it would be best that we focus on the reference or on how we see
Ah,
references?
good. You're really asking a fundamental question, and that is, should we read first or should we write first? And I say, write first. Then look it up, see if you're right. Before you start reading something, have your own hypothesis in mind. Then you'll see if the author, the writers were just as smart as you were, if they came up with the same idea. I do a lot of reading, but it's simply the reading is not just to discover new ideas, but to confirm, see if I'm right, see if other people have come up with the same thing, or if they're different, why do we disagree? So delay reading until you're writing. Write first. Peter Elbow, ELBOW, says that. Write first, get your ideas down, and then look to see if other people have similar ideas, if they can add to them, etc. That works for me.
Well, definitely, I would beg to disagree that it only works for you because, doctor, that's how I see my activity. That's also how I teach my students from senior
Good.
high school to the college, university level, because I always tell them that you execute first, you write first how you see it. Look onto references and
Good.
then you do the comparison. Because if you will look onto existing research, then how your own ideas takes in place, or as I mentioned to them, where would the magic start if you would look onto an existing one? So again, it's somehow that there is a person who is already supporting how I see things, most especially in research and in writing, because as an English teacher, that's what I usually do. But with the three thoughts that I have concluded as well and asking it with you, at least I can say my students are hearing, they would, some who would be watching this would appreciate all the things, all the tips that I'm giving to them, most especially in this field of linguistics, doctor. So it was, it was really insightful every year. That's why it was already my academic advocacy to invite you, because every year you enlighten me, my fellow colleagues, my fellow faculty members. It's just a simple word, but having an affirmation, okay, someone who is an expert, to say you as an expert in this field, affirming what we are doing, it really helps us. It boosts our morale. But like you've said, try it first, write it down, look onto it. If someone is doing it, then it's good. But do not, or that's how I see this, doctor. Do not read without you writing what's on your mind. That's how
Good. Write
that's
it
how I
first, then look it up. Yep.
that's how I see
And
it.
read the old authors too, the old ones. There's sometimes wonderful things. When I reread Chomsky, reread Frank Smith, Kenneth Goodman, these people, there's all kinds of wonderful things that I missed before.
Wonderful. That's really wonderful, Dr. Krashen. And before we end your fantastic lecture again, would there be any few words that you would wanted to leave to the viewers and to those who will be watching this lecture session with you, Doctor?
Do not neglect the magic of coffee. We need drugs to get through the day. My life changed unbelievably. Okay. So that's really it. I think I've told you everything I know, but I'll probably think of them as soon as we stop. Then I'll write them down.
That was really great. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Stephen D. Krashen gracing once again in our platform. And Doctor, we're really honored that every time we ask you to share your insights, every year we have topics. Even right now, I have something in mind that I would like you to share, but it will be on the upcoming December 2023. But I'm so excited because like I mentioned, this helped us, doctor. This is really a big
My
help.
pleasure. Good.
This is really a big help. So I'll be ending the live here, doctor, so that I could ask you or there. Uh, um, it was really, again, doctor, it was really an honor having you inspiring not just myself, but all the educators. And right now, doctor, the session that you gave would help inspire the learners, because with the first two sessions you've had with us from 2020 and then 2021, it focused on educators. But right now, you've enlightened even the learners. And I can't wait to hear thoughts, feedbacks from my students after they've watched your session, Dr. Krashen. So thank you very much, Doctor. It was really a pleasure and an honor to have you once again.
Well, you know what I'm going to do now. I'm going to get another coffee.
Thank you, Doctor. It's not the typical webinar that you usually do.
I know.
This one, it is very the natural, Dr. Krashen. And again, Doctor, please, December 2023, I will be inviting you again. I have a topic already in my mind, and I hope it does not change. And yes, Doctor, that's all I can say right now. I hope you had a great Yuletide season there, and thank you so much for inspiring
you
us.
may share this video with anyone you feel should hear it, except you may not share it with Donald Trump. Okay.
Definitely, Doctor. I wouldn't. But again,
Okay.
yes, Dr. Krashen, thank you so much. It's been an honor once
Okay,
again.
my pleasure. All right.
See you, Doctor.